Welcome back, Kindred Spirits. I am Donna Gaudette, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. This episode is one that I know will touch many hearts because we're talking about something that so many of us so long for, which is signs and messages from our loved ones in spirit. You know, when we lose someone we love, there's this deep ache that never truly leaves us. And what we often crave most isn't just their presence, it's knowing that they're okay, that they still exist in some form beyond what our human eyes can see. And sometimes that reassurance comes in the most beautiful, unexpected ways. So today we're going to explore what those signs and messages could look like, how to recognize them, and also we're going to talk about angels and other helpers that help us on our journey. And I'll also be sharing some very, very personal experiences with you. So thank you for enjoying the podcast and thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're here today because what we're talking about is something deeply personal, something that reminds us that love doesn't end when someone we care passes. It transforms, it expands, and sometimes it whispers back to us in ways we never expect. Whether it's a song on the radio that makes you stop in your tracks, a feather that appears right when you've been asking for comfort, or a moment of stillness where you feel a warmth or a peace around you. These aren't coincidences, they're conversations. They're messages written in the language of spirit. And sometimes those messages don't just come from loved ones who've passed, but they can come from angels, guardian beings, guardian angels, whichever way you want to refer to them, and even earth angels. Those souls that are here among us who show up at the exact time offering love, guidance, or a gentle nudge when we need it most. And I think we've all had our experiences with earth angels. So today we're going to talk about how all of these messages weave together, all, whether you call them, I don't like to call them coincidences, I like to call them synchronicities, the divine timing of the subtle signs that remind us that we're being held, guided, and deeply loved by something far greater than ourselves. So, spirit communicates through energy, and energy we know is everywhere. When we quiet our minds and soften our skepticism, that's often when we begin to notice the patterns. Messages from our loved ones, angels or guides, aren't always grand or dramatic. Often they're subtle, even subtle whispers that brush across our awareness when our hearts are open enough to notice. Maybe it's a song that plays the exact same moment you were thinking of someone you've lost. That happens to me quite a lot. And especially right now with the holiday season, it's difficult to get through a Christmas playlist without the tears happening. And maybe it's a butterfly, a dragonfly that lands right beside you when you're talking to them in your thoughts. Maybe many people see even cardinals, red cardinals, when they're talking to their loved one in spirit. We associate the red cardinal with someone in spirit, but for different people, it could be a butterfly, a dragonfly, a particular cloud shape. It could be anything that you feel connected to. My mom used to send dragonflies, and I remember one time I was sitting outside with my dad and a dragonfly landed right on my hand. We had been talking about my mom, and one landed right on the top of my hand, and it sat there for 30 minutes, just its little wings just fluttering here and there, and it just sat there. And it was purple, and it was my mom's favorite color. And my dad and I looked at each other, and it was such a moment that we shared that defied explanation. It defied talking about what was going on. We just knew that it was a sign and we respected that. And we were grateful to be a witness to that. And my dad, my dad sends four-leaf clovers because my parents' anniversary is St. Patrick's Day. So he sends four-leaf clovers. Sometimes it can be a flicker of light, a familiar scent, a dream that feels too real to be a dream. And what I mean by that is if you have a type of dream where it feels like you can feel them in your dreams, you can smell their essence, you can feel their presence. It's just different than just dreaming. You wake up and you feel like you actually had a visit with them. That's because it was a visit. But here's the most important part. Many people don't receive signs right away and they wonder, and I did the same thing, that even if you don't receive a sign, please know it doesn't mean your loved one isn't with you. Sometimes sometimes their energy is still adjusting, and sometimes your grief may be too. I'm not blaming you for it. It's just part of the process. And sometimes their message is finding another way to reach you. Maybe we're looking for a particular type of sign and we haven't seen. We're looking for this billboard, but maybe it came in a subtle song. Maybe it came with the breeze. Maybe it came with a car pulling in front of you that had a bumper sticker. That happened to me once, and it had a shamrock on it after me thinking about my dad. So sometimes it could be very subtle, and it could be through a feeling, a memory, or even another person entirely. When my dad passed in 2010, I was looking for signs of affirmation of him everywhere. And we had talked in depth when he was ill about signs and messages. My dad was a big believer as well as my mom was. He would sit and I asked, "What would you send me?" And because I knew he would be open to it. And he wouldn't be specific. He would just give me that sly little smile that he always did. And he says, "You'll know. You'll know." That's all he used to tell me. And a year later, and I was still waiting for a sign from him. Of course, you go through are they upset with me? That's why they're not giving me signs. Or was it because I was still grieving so deeply that I wasn't able to see the signs? My dad came to me in a dream when we were at our vacation place on the Cape the following year in 2011. And I saw him, and he looked around 30 years old. And to let you know that when you have a visit from a loved one in spirit, sometimes they look the age they were when they passed, but most of the time they will look much younger, usually about 30, 35 years old, which is typical for people who appear to us in our dreams. And that sometimes can tell you that it's not actually a dream, it was actually a visit. I still remember, with my dad, what he was wearing when he came to me, and I remember running toward him, and he put out his hands to stop me, and he said, "You need to stop looking for me. I'm everywhere. I am okay, but you need to stop looking for me, and you need to start living again." That was so profound for me, and there was more that happened after that, and stay tuned, I will get into that shortly, but you don't wanna miss that experience because it's such a profound one that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. So, over the years, I've heard countless stories from people who felt their loved ones reach out after they passed, not in a grand, cinematic way, but in those beautiful, subtle gestures. And I did reach out to my community and online, and I asked people to share stories. And some wanted to share them, but didn't want them on the podcast. But I have one from Megan here who wanted me to share her experience. And I'm reading this verbatim of what she wrote to me. She wrote, 7 years ago, my husband and I found out we were pregnant a fourth time. Having been pregnant 3 times with 2 living children. I waited alone and anxious in the cold exam room for my first ultrasound. I could tell right away that the inexperienced technician was uncomfortable. She kept fidgeting, adjusting the screen away from me. She grew quiet, pale, and she left the room abruptly. The door burst open to the small room, and in came an older man in a white coat with peppery collar-length, frizzy hair, who looked as confused as I felt. His gaze settled on the screen, and he didn't speak. The doctor walked over to me, bent down slowly, kissed me on my forehead, and whispered, "This isn't your fault." He was gone before my first tear slid down my cheek. After I healed, and I thought back on the situation, I decided to reach out to the doctor who showed such kindness. I called the office and gave a description. They couldn't tell me who he was. I went through their staff records on their website. I looked at every photo for every doctor listed. I never found him. I truly believe that in that moment I needed it most. I met an angel in a white coat. He somehow managed to make one of the worst moments a little easier, just with a few words and a gentle, caring, uncharacteristic gesture. I want to thank Megan for sharing and trusting me with her profound experience. And I know Megan has healed and is healing, as we will for her entire life. over something that was so traumatic and so unpredictable. Some people feel a presence beside them like a quiet warmth. Others dream so vividly that it feels like a true visit. And then there are those uncanny coincidences, numbers, songs, feathers, coins that seem to show up when our hearts need reassurance. I have a friend of mine, her name is Carrie, and she is a registered nurse, and we met through our Empowered Women of Wisdom group. And she had many, many spiritual experiences, and I'm hoping that someday she'll come on the podcast as a guest because I would love for her to share her story. And she would find pennies everywhere. We started calling her Nurse Penny Feather. She would find feathers, she'd find pennies, and she would post about them. And she had the most profound experiences. So never discount a penny. And I tell people, if you find a penny, pick it up. Okay. Look at the date on the penny. Is the date significant to you? Could be the year that a loved one passed, could be the year they were born. It could be a year that means something to you. And I tell people, if it's not significant for the year, just remember the saying on it, "In God we trust." And maybe that's just a message for you at that time that you need to trust in your higher power, that everything's going to be okay. And now we're done making pennies from what I hear. And so if you do find a penny, definitely pick it up because they're going to be far and few in between. So maybe the penny you do find could be significant for you. I had many people ask me if their pets can visit them just like their loved ones do. And I say, absolutely. My pets in spirit visit us quite frequently. And if you have other pets at home, they may be noticing them as well or acting out as if they're playing with them. I recently lost a dear pet on November 18th, just a few weeks ago. Our cat Charity. We are still grieving her loss, and it was devastating to lose her. We know we didn't have much time with her, but we grew so attached to her. But she loved it here so much, and she loved us so much that I knew she didn't want to leave, and I think that's why she had such a very difficult passing. She used to sleep with us every night, and she lied on the bed with me anytime I was lying on the bed. She was my emotional support kitty. She followed us everywhere, and the night of her passing, my husband could feel her paw impressions next to him and felt her near him. I was sitting on the sofa one night when I could not sleep, and it was about 3 a.m., and I felt something brush up against my hand on the sofa where she passed. I thought it was my other kitty, Daisy, and I went to touch her, but there was nothing there. I have no doubt that it was Charity. So, yes, our pets can give us signs, and they can visit us after they've crossed the rainbow bridge. And as much as we communicate, want to talk to our loved ones in spirit, invite your pets back into your life because you know what? They miss you as much as you miss them. So psychologists call these after-death communications or ADCs. And studies suggest that almost 1 in 3 people report experiencing something like that at some point in their lives. And again, some people don't believe in it. They think it's woo-woo. I've had my share of people making fun of me because of the work that I used to do and how I am. I spent my entire life being judged for it, and I would shy away from it. I hid it until I got to the point that I couldn't hide it anymore because it was just of who I was. So don't ever think that if you communicate with someone in spirit, whether through a medium, whether through connection on your own, value that experience and never apologize for how it makes you feel. But it's more than just, data points because the proof the proof is the love, and that has its own language, and it appears in different ways. When my own loved ones passed, I began noticing things that logic couldn't explain, and I knew better than to try to find logic in it, even through my analytical mind. Because moments that seemed perfectly orchestrated, like a cardinal outside the window on a day that I was missing my dad, a scent that reminded me of my mom's perfume when there was no one else around. There are times I am alone in my kitchen and I smell my mom's perfume, and she had the type of perfume that it smelled different on everyone. So my aunt and her had the same perfume that smelled different on each one of them. So when I smell that, it usually means when I'm going through something, I'll smell her perfume and I'll know that she's around me and I know it's going to be okay. It's very comforting. It doesn't bother me, It gives me comfort. And what about a white feather floating down inside a closed elevator? Yes, that happened to me several years ago. And to be honest, every time that I have come across a feather randomly in my path, I've always kept them. I have had feathers on my dash in my car when my car was locked. I've had them in the strangest places. And every time I come across them, I always keep them. And strangely enough, a few months ago, my husband was changing the air filter on our heating system, and he came upstairs and he said, "I found this on the filter," and it was a white feather. It was a little bit yellowish from the air filter, but it was white originally. We have no birds. We have nothing in the house that would precipitate us having any feathers. My cats don't have any toys with feathers, and all of my collection of feathers are in a box, a wooden box. So there was nothing floating around. And ironically, I had been talking to my mom and dad and my aunt in spirit that morning before my husband came up. And so, yeah, I did add that feather to my collection because I know it was a sign from them in a strangest way, but it was a sign from them. So each of these synchronistic moments have felt like a thread connecting this side to the other, reminding me and reminding you that love doesn't end. It just changes form. We all know that the ending of our life is a part of life. Death is a part of life. And we know we're going to see our loved ones on the other side. But it's that moment between the time they were here and the time we see them again that we miss. Those moments, that connection, the things we did with them, the way they made us feel. That's what we miss the most. We know we're going to see them again, but until then, we miss them. So, from a spiritual perspective, many believe that energy and therefore love never dies. And I truly believe that. And because it shifts, it expands, and it reconnects with us through our intuition, through emotion, intuition, and meaningful synchronicities that Carl Jung called synchronicity. I don't claim to have all the answers. Maybe none of us do. But I've come to believe that signs and synchronicities are like love notes, but they're written in the language of the soul. You just have to slow down enough to read them. And admittedly, we all have a lot going on in our lives. But I promise you that if you stop to connect with yourself, with your energy, and with your own spirit, and you ask for a sign and you get out of the way, and when it's time, you'll get it. When we lose someone we love, our hearts ache for proof that they're okay, that somehow they still exist in a way that connects to us. And then sometimes, without warning, something happens that only could be described as magical or out of this world. You might dream of them, but it feels different than any ordinary dream. You wake up in tears, or you wake up in peace, or even a sense that they were really there. That's what happened with the dream about my dad. Or maybe you see a butterfly, a special bird, a dragonfly land in the exact same spot your loved one used to sit. Maybe the clock always stops at the same time they passed, or a song that was your song plays when you're thinking of them. There was there was one time I was visiting my mom's grave and I was going through some really challenging health problems. I sat there in the car after talking to her at the gravesite, getting myself together, pulling myself together, and the car radio was always on, and a song came on. It's an older one, Live Like You Were Dying by Tim McGraw. It started playing. And it was the first time I had ever heard it, and I bawled like a baby. I know that was not a coincidence because it happened two more times after that. You see, even as someone who believes, and I do believe, I have a healthy dose of skepticism. But after the third time, I got it. I got it. And the words, it was the words of the song to really listen to them because it was a gentle reminder and it was a message. And after the third time, I took it to heart. How could I not? Another time, my husband and I were visiting our family's same cemetery. And sadly, we have more family there than we do alive, it seems. And we were making our rounds, bringing small solar decorated trees to the grave sites. I stayed in the car when my husband went to his parents' site, and we had just left my grandparents' grave site. Again, radio was on, and we have a radio streaming service that came with the lease of the car, so you always see the name of the song and all of that. I hear the beginning notes to a song that was familiar to me. I look at the dash and the song playing is Somewhere My Love. That was my grandmother's favorite song. Again, I cried like a baby. It's not that I was sad, but I was feeling so blessed and grateful to know that they knew what we did and they were appreciative. My grandmother, as well as my mom and every one of my aunts, loved Christmas. Loved Christmas. I love Christmas. I love Christmas because of the feeling it gives and the memories you have. You see, they never want us to forget them, and I never will. My dad once told me something so profound. When we were in the family car for my young brother's funeral, he said to me, "Person isn't gone until they are forgotten." And that always stuck with me. And you know what? It always will. The logical mind, these may seem like coincidences, but to the soul, they're sacred communication. I look at them as ways, new ways for them to communicate, to just say, I'm still here. And when you allow your heart to stay open, you begin to notice that these signs don't just happen once, they become a pattern, a spiritual rhythm. It's as if the universe keeps whispering, you are never alone. And as someone who used to do angel card readings, mediumship, and spiritual life coaching, I used to have so many people asking me the same question. Is my loved one okay? And are they healed? We always wonder, are they okay? Are they healed? Are they still in pain? And to answer that question, yes, they are okay, more than okay, and they are healed. Because you see, when we get to the spirit world, heaven, whichever term you want to use, anything that held us down physically, emotionally, mentally is released. No more pain, no illness, no restrictions, nothing that prevents us from being free. And that includes our pets as well. If they suffered, if they were sick, they're free. They're pain free. They're running. They're just living their best afterlife. I remember people coming in for readings and feeling this heavy weight on their shoulders and then leaving my healing space lighter and more at peace. That is why I did what I did. I never advertised what I did. People found me by word of mouth. I never chose or wanted to be a spiritual medium. But there I was, living the dream of helping others. I don't regret it, but admittedly, it was physically and spiritually draining. And since becoming ill in 2017, I no longer professionally do any of that work any longer. And it's not, I don't want to say that it was work. I had a job that provided my financial means. And my healing practice and what I did filled me spiritually. That provided my spiritual worth. And it's not that I don't want to do this kind of work anymore. It's that I cannot physically or emotionally handle the heaviness and the strain it puts on my body, mind, and spirit. Am I still a medium? Yes, absolutely. It's a gift from God that I treasure always. But over the years, I have learned to fiercely protect my energy. So, how can you connect with your loved ones in spirit and ask for signs? So, when you stay receptive to messages and signs, you stay connected to your loved one in spirit. So, here's a couple of gentle ways to begin. 1, quiet your mind, whether through meditation, prayer, or just breathing deeply. Why not create space for stillness? Because that's where messages come through. When you're driving, that's meditative. A lot of people say, I don't know how I got here so fast. So driving can be a form of meditation. And so sometimes just breathing, meditation, prayer, those messages will come through. If you automatically just somebody pops in your head that's in spirit, chances are they have a message for you or just letting you know, hey, I'm here. Sometimes there's no message. It's just, hey, I'm here. 2, ask for signs. Angels and loved ones respond to intention. Ask them to show you a sign that brings comfort or clarity, and then release control. If you wait for it to happen, you will be waiting a long time. Because you know what? There is no sense of time in the spirit world. We may ask and they may hear, but they may not respond for some time because they have no concept of time. It doesn't exist for them, just for humans. Number 3, acknowledge what you receive. When you see or feel something meaningful, say thank you. Gratitude keeps the channels open, and it's important not to challenge them and ask them for another sign immediately after receiving one, because that is your ego. And all that does is create heavy energy, and that pushes them away, and you don't want that. Number 4, journal your experiences. Patterns often appear when you write them down. You might realize that your signs always come on significant dates or during emotional transitions. When I first started this journey many, many years ago, I would journal my dreams as soon as I woke up, my experiences throughout the day, and you'll see a pattern start to develop. Number 5, trust your intuition. It's the soul's first language, the bridge between you and the unseen. Don't discount the small, subtle signs because those may be significant. And I'll tell you why. So I want to share a few experiences with you. We were flying out to Texas in 2018 to visit family. It was my very first time flying, and I was scared. What didn't help was that the flight was delayed a few hours, and we would be leaving in the dark. I was already very anxious. I prayed to my angels, my guardian angels, my loved ones in spirit to give me strength and support to get on that plane. My legs felt like lead, and I was so scared. And I waited, but I didn't feel anything. Again, my anxiety could have been blocking any signs that they were sending me because I was in that way. My energy was more fierce than theirs trying to come through. But as soon as we were able to board, we did. And as we settled in our seats, there was a gentleman seated in the front row, in front of us, in another row. He had a baseball cap on. On the back of his cap, there was a small embroidered 4-leaf clover. I knew that my mom and dad were there with me because you know what? The anniversary is St. Patrick's Day. I looked at my husband and I said, look, it's a sign it's going to be okay. And on the back of his cap was a very small, it was embroidered in a little 4-leaf clover. And I was just so grateful. And you always remember to thank them, whether out loud or in your mind. Thank them for the sign because you know what? When you acknowledge what they send you, you'll start getting more. I have had so many experiences that it was really hard to choose the ones to share, but one that stands out is one that I'm going to try to get through without getting too emotional. Again, as I said before, I don't edit out emotion. And I hope that you'll bear with me if I become a little emotional, but it's I can't share this story without becoming that way. My husband and I spend our anniversaries on the Cape every year. Well, we used to before he had his accident. We always stayed at the same inn, which was right on Nantucket Sound. And if you open the slider for the room, there's a patch of grass and the ocean is right there. You could not get any closer to the water. We've been staying there for over 30 years. That morning we were checking out and I believe it was 2011 and my dad had passed in 2010. And that year was a very difficult year for us. Nothing until the dream that I had of him that night before he told me I needed to start living and stop looking for him. That was the only time I had seen him. That morning I went down to the shoreline and I dug my feet in the sand and said my goodbyes to the sea like I always do. The sea is my happy place. I am not a sit on the beach and bake in the sun girl. I don't like to go in the ocean except up to my ankles, but I love walks on the beach with my husband and I love the energy of the sea, how it makes me feel. I just love being there. The sea being at that one spot, that's my church. My ritual was always to thank it for its beauty and how it made me feel and leave it with gratitude. Because the sea, the ocean, that's my spiritual sanctuary. I always feel so connected to spirit, the universe, God, whichever way you describe it, but all of the above for me. It was my connection and where I could feel heard, healed, and held. I always wrote a goodbye message in the sand, and that morning was no different. And that day, it came to me to write the word gratitude. Because even though it was a really tough year, I was just still very grateful. As I walked up the steps, the sun was shining bright, and all of a sudden, I heard a voice in my ear whisper, pick up the 4-leaf clover. I looked around and didn't see anyone. The voice felt angelic, and it was just so calming. I thought maybe it's my imagination or maybe it was the wind. I kept on walking, and then again, before I reached the room, I heard a little bit louder, pick up the four-leaf clover. All of a sudden, this beam of sunlight came down from the sun and landed on a small spot on the very green grass that was filled with thousands of clover and all sorts of greenery. Intuition told me to bend down and follow the beam of light, and when I did, I picked up what I thought was just a clover. And when I held it up, I noticed it was a four-leaf clover. There had to be thousands of clover there. I was stunned. I bolted into the hotel room, not sure how I got the slider open so fast, and showed my husband and told him what happened. Now, fortunately, he knows me well enough to know that these experiences, since we've been together, are not all uncommon. And earlier that morning, before I went down to the beach, he asked if I wanted to stop at a local metaphysical shop that we always stopped at. The name of the shop was called Lavender Moon. And we had been visiting it on the Cape since our honeymoon in 97. I had told him no, but when we got in the car after leaving the hotel, I said something told me we needed to go. I asked in my mind why, and about 15 minutes later, a car pulled in front of us and on the two-lane highway in the Cape, and the license plate said Angel 44. I pointed it out to my husband, and he said, "Yeah, I saw that." And I said we needed to stop at the shop after all. It was about another 20-minute drive until we got there, and when we went in, and I loved being there, I loved that shop. We browsed, and I noticed these beautiful hand-blown glass treasures in the window. And I had bought a heart-shaped one years before, but now there was a four-leaf clover among other designs. And these hand-blown pieces were made specifically for that shop by a local glass company on the Cape, and all of it all of them were infused with a phosphorus. So when they absorbed the light during the day, they glowed at night. And I do have a piece, and it's beautiful. So just as I pointed out that shape to my husband, the relaxing new age music abruptly stopped in the middle of the song. And I just looked at him and I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe something happened to it. And then all of a sudden, a song came on. The song was In the Arms of an Angel by Sarah McLachlan. My dad loved that song. Whenever he heard it, he would tear up. My dad was finally giving me messages he was okay. I looked at my husband and he knew what I was thinking. We both we were stunned. And if I had been alone, I would have thought I imagined it, but he was there right with me. I started to feel my eyes well up and my throat start to feel tight. And I knew that I would erupt into an emotional mess if I didn't leave. We left, not purchasing anything, and we sat in the car, me crying and him comforting me. And we never did buy that four-leaf clover glass piece. Those pieces that were designed were made specifically for them, and they were not sold anywhere else. On the drive home, I told my husband that when we went back, we had to stop there first because I needed to buy that piece. When we went back the following year, the shop had closed. I had missed my opportunity, but in retrospect, the opportunity that was meant for me to be there was the signs from my dad, and it wasn't about making a purchase. It was about the song. It was about the four-leaf clover. It was about listening to my intuition and fully being present in my life where I had checked out for many, many months. And that in itself was a gift. Now, I want to talk about angels for a little bit. So often people think of angels as distant beings with wings living somewhere far above us. But in truth, their energy is very close and very personal. Because angels are pure messengers of light and love. They vibrate at a frequency so high that sometimes we feel them as a warmth, a peace, a tingling energy, not something that we always see, but something that we know or that we feel. Guardian angels are believed to walk with us from the moment we're born to the moment we leave this world. They protect us, comfort, and guide us, and sometimes they send those signs we notice, the white feathers, the flashes of light, number patterns like 111 or 444, or even a soft voice of intuition saying turn left instead of right. Has that ever happened to you? I know for me, I would be driving and all of a sudden something tells me to change my route or to stop and pull over entirely or to not leave the house. I have learned over my lifetime that you listen to those nudges because more than once, they have saved my life. My mom was such a big believer in angels, and she would give me things over the years, and I just never felt connected to them like she did. And it wasn't until after she passed and I was going through a really bad health crisis that I started to feel connected to them in a way that I never had before. And this all happened after I had was attuned to my first level of Reiki. And I spoke about my experience in a prior episode. So please go back and listen to that episode if you can. It was such a profound experience. And how that light inside of me, just went off and I finally realized my purpose in life. And it was then that I started to feel connected to something that was bigger than my life. And since then, angels have been a part of my life every day. When I do my prayers every night, I speak to my angels, my archangels, my spirit guides, my loved ones in spirit every night. So let's talk about one of the most common ways the universe and our spiritual team get our attention. What about repetitive numbers? You know the ones 111, 222, 333, 444. You might see them on a clock, a license plate, a receipt, and just know it means something. These are often called angel numbers, and each carries a unique vibration and a message. So, a few examples. If you a big one is if you look at the clock and it says 11:11. That's a big one. Or you look at something and it says 11:11. That's a nudge from the universe that your thoughts are aligning with your soul's truth. It's a doorway moment, a reminder that you're connected, supported, and right where you're meant to be. So when you see 11:11, it often means pay attention. Sometimes something is shifting in your energy or in your life path. 111, it's about manifestation and motion. This number is like a flash of light saying, your thoughts are creating your reality right now. And it's a prompt to gently steer your mind toward what you want instead of what you fear. The angels are encouraging you to stay focused on your intention. 3 3 or any version of that, guidance from the ascended masters. Seeing 3 3 suggests that loving, wise spiritual beings, often called ascended masters, are surrounding you with support. It's a number of purpose, creativity, and being encouraged to use your voice or your gifts to help others. What about 44, surrounded by angels? It's a signal that the angels are close, they're steadying your path and giving you strength. This is often seen during times of hard decisions, healing, or transition, and it says you don't walk this part alone. What about 444? That's about protection, reassurance, and stability. It's one of the strongest angelic signs, 444. This number brings a grounding, comforting message. The angels are watching over you and your loved ones in spirit are safe. It's also a reminder that you're building a foundation for the next chapter of your life, even if you can't see it yet. When you start noticing these patterns, it's not coincidence, it's consciousness. It's your angels saying, we're here, keep going. Now, while our loved ones in spirit often send personal signs, there's also a larger team working behind the scenes. Our angels, guardian angels, spirit guides, and even earth angels. So let's take a gentle walk through each of them. Spirit guides are souls who have lived human lives before and now serve as mentors from the spirit world. They understand the human journey because they've walked it. They guide us through our intuition, our dreams, nudges, synchronicities. My grandmother, who I was very close to, she passed when I was 11, and she has been my spirit guide since she passed. I always feel her around me, and when I feel overwhelmed, stressed, worried, scared, I pray to her. And if this calm comes over me, then I know it's going to be okay. I always feel protected by her presence. And every time I would get that feeling of safety, I felt safe, I felt protected, and it always turned out okay. So do you have someone in your life that you feel is your spirit guide? Guardian angels are divine beings assigned to us from birth. They protect, comfort, and guide us, often quietly through gut instincts or sudden feelings of calm and chaos. similar to spirit guides, but they, you know, come, they're assigned to us when we're born. And angels, of course, are celestial beings of pure light who work through love and frequency, and they don't interfere with free will. But if you invite them in or ask for their help, you can be assured that they will respond. And earth angels. Earth angels are people, yes, human beings who carry that same gentle healing energy. They may appear in your life exactly when you need kindness, grace, guidance, or a reminder that love still exists in this world. Sometimes they stay for a lifetime, sometimes for a season, but their presence always, always leaves an imprint. And isn't that such a comforting thought that we're never truly alone? That both heaven and earth are connected by threads of love, compassion, and purpose. I want to talk about the archangels briefly. I'm going to talk about four of them. There are many of them, but these are like the leaders of the angelic realm, and they oversee specific kinds of healing or guidance. So we have Archangel Michael. He is the protector. His energy feels strong, steady, and safe, and we call on Michael when you need courage, protection, or help cutting cords from fear and negativity. We have Archangel Raphael. He's the healer. And with Archangel Michael, his color is purple. With Archangel Raphael, his is green. He's the healer. His energy is gentle and deeply loving, often associated again with the color green. Call on Raphael for physical, emotional, or spiritual healing. And we have Archangel Gabriel. Gabriel is the messenger. Gabriel's energy inspires creativity, communication, and clarity. Many writers, artists, and speakers feel this angel's presence when they create. When I am writing and I am stuck and I am stumped and I have that writer's block, I'll call on Archangel Gabriel. And then we have Archangel Uriel. Uriel is the bringer of light and wisdom, and Uriel helps illuminate the truth, especially in moments of confusion or doubt. If you're trying to make a decision, many people will call in Archangel Uriel. Each of these angels, and truly all of them, are available to you simply by asking. You don't need special rituals or words, just an open heart and the willingness to suspend belief that love transcends all forms. Have you ever had a visit or an experience from an archangel? I'd love to hear from you. Please share your story with us. I would love to share a very personal story with you. I experienced this in 2017 and it's still indelible in my mind, and it is something that I think about often and I carry it with me always. In 2017, I had already endured two procedures to eradicate kidney stones. One of those procedures caused me to go into septic shock, and I was in the hospital for a while. Unfortunately, I had to go back for a third procedure to correct the second procedure, and admittedly, I was scared. On the drive to the hospital that morning, it was long, and I found myself praying to Archangel Michael to protect me as well as Archangel Raphael. And I know Raphael was the healer of the protection of health, but Michael, Archangel Michael, has always been the one I have turned to in times of need. And that morning, I called on to Michael. When I was getting prepped in day surgery, they told me that the anesthesiologist would be coming in to put my IV in. About 10 minutes later, at the foot of the bed, there was a gentleman who had a surgical mask on, all in his scrubs, looked like a doctor, looked like could be part of the medical staff. And all I remember seeing is these blue eyes that looked the color of Windex. Now, my husband was sitting right next to me on the side of me, so he experienced everything I did. So I know I wasn't having an illusion or a hallucination. I hadn't been giving any meds, so I knew that he was seeing what I was seeing. He spoke very softly to me and he said his name was Michael and he was there to help me. I assumed he was the anesthesiologist because the nurse said that he would be by. But there was something about this person that just radiated so much calm and so much peace. He came over to the side of me on the bed and he took my hand. And I was compelled to tell him that I had very small veins and that I have difficult to get an IV in me. And I showed him where they usually have a good chance of getting it in. So still holding my hand, he gently touched my shoulder with his other hand and calmly said to me, while looking into my eyes, and I can still see him in front of me when I closed my eyes, of those piercing blue eyes. And he said to me, I hear you, and I know you're scared. But I thank you for telling me where I should look on your arm for the best area to use. Just know that I hear you, and I am listening, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you. There was just something about his voice, his energy that just felt familiar to me. I felt so calm, and he put the IV in, and I didn't even feel it. I didn't even know he did. And when he told me it was done, I just looked down and couldn't believe it because he did it while talking to me, and I was just looking at him. He said to me, I know you're scared because of what happened last time, and I know you think and believe that people failed you, and they did. I read your chart. You have been through more than your fair share, and I know you're so scared. But I am going to be right there in that operating room, and I will not leave your side. You may not see me, but you will feel me. Just know I am with you always. And with that, he left. I looked at my husband to ask him if we were having the same hallucination or dream or delusion. And he just looked at me and said, no, I felt it too. He says, I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. My husband is a man of few words, and that really moved him that day. Was it Archangel Michael? I don't know. But what I do know is that something spiritual happened that day to both of us. And because of it, it helped me get through one of the hardest, scariest times of my life. A short while later, the nurse came by and said that Michael, the anesthesiologist, would be coming by to do my IV. And I said, oh, it's already done. I said, Michael put it in. And she said, I just spoke to him and he said he would be coming by. We don't have any other Michael on staff today. Are you sure he said his name was Michael? I looked at my husband and I said, he did say his name was Michael, right? And my husband said, yes, he did. And he introduced himself as Michael. I said, you have to, because Michael, he put my IV in and I never felt it go in. Again, I turned to my husband for validation and he reiterated the same thing. She went and got the anesthesiologist and said, is this the person who came? And I said, no. And the doctor said the same thing. He hadn't been by to see me. When I got to the operating room, I searched for Michael. I searched for those eyes. I searched for him. There were so many people around, and they had already given me a sedative on the way to the operating room. And I asked him if Michael was there. And again, the anesthesiologist said, I'm right here. And I said, no, the other Michael, the Archangel Michael. And they assumed that the meds had kicked in and they didn't respond. But before I went under, I felt this warmth around me, and I felt this comfort and compassion that I can just describe as pure love. And I knew in my heart there was no doubt, even to this day, that Archangel Michael was there with me. And that wasn't the last time either. 2 more times after that, at that same hospital, a few years apart, I experienced that same energy and the same person who helped me feel safe and calm. And of course, when I told the nurse that Michael helped me again, I was told there was no Michael on staff that day. But never give in to the disbelief of things that you can't always touch or feel. But if you experience it, it's so deep in your soul. When I got home from the hospital that day, I wrote everything out that happened. I channeled every experience and emotion, and I wrote it down as soon as I walked in through that door because I did not want to forget it. That's why I can recall it so vividly, because that is where the true connection happens. I have always believed after that happened that if I asked for help and I asked for my angels, my archangels, my spirit guides, my guardian angels for help, I know without a doubt that it will happen if it's for my highest and greatest good. So sometimes when I think about how spirit communicates with us, I imagine it like a radio signal. The love from the other side is always broadcasting. We just have to tune our hearts in to the right frequency. And sometimes it's not about trying so hard to find a sign. It's about living with awareness, gentleness, and gratitude, and letting the signs find you. So if you've ever had a moment where you suddenly felt peace wash over you or heard your loved one's name spoken right when you need comfort, trust that. There's no coincidences. They're finding their love and they're finding a way through. A couple of episodes ago, I was editing my podcast, and there was a distinct message, and it said, "I am here," in an angelic voice. I didn't edit it out because I knew that it was a message from spirit. And when I listened to that episode, even with the music, you can hear it clear as day. And to me, that is a gift. So just know they're always finding a way through to communicate. You just need to stay open. Because the more open we become, the more we start to notice these moments, the synchronicities, the patterns, the unexpected comfort that arrives when we need it most. It's not about being woo woo or constantly searching for meaning. It's about trusting that there's meaning already woven into our lives. When we open our hearts, when we quiet the noise, when we listen, when we feel, when we get out of our own way, we start to sense that we're being gently guided. And I truly believe that angels, spirit guides, and our loved ones in the afterlife work together in harmony. They collaborate on our behalf, weaving threads of light through our lives every day. A nudge here, a whisper there, so we never, ever walk alone. Maybe the greatest comfort of all is knowing that life isn't a closed door, it's an open window. And through that window, love keeps flowing. Whether it's through a feather, a penny found, a dream, a whisper, or a stranger who crosses your path with just the right words, you are being loved and guided in ways you can't always see. The more open you are, the more likely you will experience the beautiful connection to your loved ones in spirit and your spirit helpers and angels. So thank you for sharing this space, this sacred space with me today. We covered a lot of material today, and some of it can be heavy, but re-listen to this episode a number of times if you need to. If today's episode brought you comfort or reminded you of someone you love in spirit, I'd love to hear your story. You can connect with me through our Healing Our Kindred Spirits community page, our private group page, or email at healingourkindredspirits.com. I'm sorry, healingourkindredspirits@gmail.com. And remember, stay open, stay curious, and just believe. And know that every time your heart feels that quiet nudge of peace, it's spirit reminding you that love is eternal. Until next time, my kindred spirits, take gentle care of your heart and remember, you are never too much, and you are always, always enough.